Welcome to our regular trustee meeting on Monday, July 13th, 2020 at 5:04 p.m. If you can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an agenda for today's meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
Board, I have one. Before old business and after citizens desiring to speak, I'd like to add rescheduled speaker, Commissioner Bob Glazer.
And Board, I have an amendment as well. Under fiscal officer, I'd like to place a resolution to update our investment policy.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? Alrighty, I'll need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $357,558.47 for the 7/1/2020 payroll.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the payment listing reports in the amount of $424,246.80 for warrants through July 2nd, 2020.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes. We have minutes for the June 22nd, 2020 regular trustee meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Hearing none. Like a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the minutes for the June 22nd, 2020 regular trustee meeting.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes,
That's a lot of twos.
it was. And I want to thank Mr. Rushing again for the minutes were very concise but accurate, and I appreciate the fact that you are turning these around again every meeting. It's fantastic to see this happen.
Thank you.
We have opening for any citizens that are desiring to speak. We would have 3 minutes to speak. If there's anyone that wants to come up and talk to us, we'd be happy to hear from you. Seeing none, we have a pre-scheduled speaker, Commissioner Bob Glazer. We would be happy to have you tell us what you need to tell us.
Thank you, trustees. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what's going on at the county level. We've had some requests, and it's been difficult over the last few months with regards to what's going on with the COVID virus. As of June 1st, we put everybody back to work, so all county offices are open for business. Anybody wants to conduct any business, why, we are open. One of the big things that we're doing right now or working on has to do with the CARE Act. We will receive $2.5 million. Okay, that is what our portion will be. We're immediately going to take $500,000 of that and turn it around and give it away to local businesses. And what we're trying to do is get the word out to these businesses so that they can partake of this money. And this is aimed particularly at small businesses. Starting August 1st, the first week, we will take applications, and we will take businesses with 25 people or less. We will give them up to $10,000, okay, based on need. And the second week, we will start again with a formula for businesses 50 people or less. And again, the ceiling for that is $10,000. What this money is aimed at is try to soften the blow and pay some of the bills that small businesses have incurred with regards to going through what we're going through with the COVID-19. So we're gonna try to take and help them out because we feel that they're very important to the economy and they've been really seriously injured by and large is what we're finding. As far as our revenue goes, we anticipated that we would take a big hit. We set aside $8 million for our payroll and such, and we were braced for something to hit us with regards to this virus. But contrary to what we thought, our revenue's not looking too bad. We've taken a hit, it's come down, but it's not as bad as we expected. So far, we're very happy with that. And what's carrying us, quite frankly, is sales tax, okay? People went home, and apparently what they decided to do is home renovations. And so consequently, your hardware stores and your building stores, their revenues are up dramatically, and that helps us out with regards to the sales tax. So we were looking for something really bad there, and it hasn't been perfect, but it hasn't really been as bad as we anticipated. You've probably read about an annexation by Xenia. Going out to Central State is what they're trying to get to, and they're trying to get out there for income tax on the employees of Central State. We lost a Supreme Court decision on that. We felt it was a balloon on a string. The court disagreed with us, and so that is going to be moving forward, and you'll see that probably very soon. Over the next few years, Beavercreek or Greene County is going to be spending a huge amount of money with regards to the sewer and water plant that's located here. We're doing a lot of improvements there. We're going to put in soft water. They're going to do this by reverse osmosis, okay? And there's been a lot of disagreement amongst the commissioners, I being one, because most of Beavercreek already has water softeners. So the intent is basically to soften the water and then blend it with hard water to bring it up to 10 grains hardness and pass that through the pipes. Initially, there's probably going to be some problems with that because there's an old theory in chemistry that likes dissolve likes. So when you put soft water and start running it through pipes that for years have had iron and hardness, calcium and magnesium formed inside those pipes, it will begin to dissolve that material and move it into the people's homes. Now, when that hits their water softeners, it's probably going to clog them up. So there's going to be a growing pains as we make this transition, but the cost to do that is going to be $40 million. On the other hand, the sewer improvements that we intend to make over the next few years will run about $50 million. So there's a total of about $90 million that's going to be spent on the sewer and water systems. And this is due to the fact that the bonding that we had in place was replaced when I took office, the first year that I took office. And as a result of that, why a lot of the debt has been paid down, because what we did is financed it at a much lower interest rate. And now we're reaping the benefits of that, and apparently the money is going to be spent on soft water and sewer improvements instead of a rebate to the customers, which I disagreed with, but that's the way it is. That will be in place. Work will start next year on that. With the jail issue, we have a problem with the jail. We're operating under a court order from Judge Rice. It was on the ballot to build a new jail. It failed, and as a result of that, why it will not be on the November ballot again. But sooner or later, the county is going to have a problem where we will have to basically release prisoners and/or lodge them in some other place. The jail we have does have problems, and if we don't solve the problems, we're going to have a bigger problem, I guess. So at some point in time, Greene County has to build a jail. And I think the controversy right now is, do we build it for 300 inmates, which is what we currently have, or do we build it for 500? And the intent of the sheriff was to try to build it for 500. The reason being that gives us room for growth, and we don't have to take and build a new jail or add on to the existing jail in any short period of time. And in the interim, we can actually lease the space out at $80 to $90 a day for other inmates. So it really makes sense to build a bigger jail than we need immediately. The reason being, your initial building costs are much cheaper than when you want to go and add on at a later date. And quite frankly, I think we would be adding on at a very short period of time. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense to build a jail for the same size that we have right now, which is 300. So that will be probably again on the ballot sometime later next year, but it will not be on the ballot right away. We have had an ongoing disagreement, if you will, between the county commissioners and Judges Woolliver and Buckwalter against Judge O'Dime with regards to probate court. It's been kind of an ongoing battle over a courtroom and then what he wants to do as far as remodeling. That issue went to the Ohio Supreme Court, and they have finally ruled that the county commissioners and Judge Woolliver and Buckwalter shall prevail in the debate. So we will build a facility for Judge O'Dime if that's what he wishes, but if he doesn't wish, why, he can stay in the facilities that he's in. So that settles that. Some other county issues that I just wanted to make everybody aware of. We have a hiring freeze on, in spite of the fact that we're losing people. Right now, we don't know exactly what our overhead is going to be for the rest of this year due to the COVID-19 virus. We have experienced some of our sheriff's deputies have been confirmed positive. So we're trying to take and maintain that. All county employees have to wear masks while they're at work, and we're trying to maintain separation at work. We do not want our employees to get this disease. We also have a travel freeze in effect. One of the big ways to spread this is through travel to other areas, and what we don't want is employees going out and bringing it back in. The state of Ohio has so far been very lightly touched, if you will. Toledo and Cleveland have been hotbeds. Cincinnati and Columbus, your bigger cities, seem to be where the biggest problems are, and we hope that we can keep it out of Greene County. Our capital improvements, we had several capital improvements scheduled for this year. We canceled those, or we're greatly restricting those expenditures because with this situation, we really don't know what our obligations and our spending is going to be required of the county. So we're trying to control our expenses as much as we can this year, and that's kind of the game plan as we go forward. And I just want to say that My name is Bob Glazer. I'm a county commissioner. And if anybody has anything that they want to get a hold of me about or talk to me about, they can email me at bglazer@co.green, GREENE, .oh.us. Or they can call me at area code 937-562-5006. And if anybody has any questions, I'd certainly be glad to try to answer them. Do you have any questions, anybody? Go ahead.
I had one, just relative to the CARES Act, or two relative to the CARES Act money. So number one, is the money that you're going to be distributing, is it in the form of a forgivable loan or in a grant?
It's going to be in the form of a grant.
Okay. And then second is, you touched on businesses that have 25 and 50 or less, but what about companies that have more employees than that?
Basically, we anticipate that they'll be able to take and survive on their own.
Okay. So you're limiting it to 50
We're
or
limiting
less?
it to the smaller businesses,
Okay.
yes, because it's a situation where we can't bail everybody out. So
Okay.
you have to make hard choices. And the businesses that we feel that were hardest hit by this thing are the smaller businesses. And we don't feel that generally they don't have the resources available to them to survive. And we feel it's very important that they do survive for our good as a local economy.
The last question, I guess, relative again to the CARES Act, though, is based on 500,000 is what you're going to distribute, and the limit is 10,000. That's only 50 companies in Greene County that you're going to help. What are you doing with the other 2 million?
The other 2 million, basically, we're going to try to cover some of the losses that we've received at the county, try to make up some of the deficit that we've run in the county. We have an emergency fund that we keep available, and we've dished into that money to basically keep everything running full tilt throughout this situation.
Thank
Any
you.
more questions?
Well, I had a couple on the, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're fine.
Oh, I'll go last.
No, go ahead, you're fine, thank you.
On the,
Go ahead, Deborah.
on the CARES Act, monies, what are the qualifications? Was it to reimburse people for what they spent on the COVID supplies, or was it broader than that?
It's basically a situation where if they have expenses, if they can show expenses that they've encountered and they have a need for funding, basically we will take and supply money up to $10,000 to them.
And prior to the meeting, I talked to Mr. Kugler, because we had a meeting about this CARES Act, and he's going to have your economic development person send the applications to our administrator, Mr. Zahariev, so
Okay.
that we can have that information passed out. And I would encourage us to please get it to the Chamber of Commerce, so we can assist them.
We're looking basically to help. We can't help everybody, but we feel that we can take some of this money, okay, due to the fact that we didn't get hit as hard as we thought we were going to get hit. We were saved by sales tax, okay? Sales tax was up, and we anticipated it would be down, and that difference is helping us to take and do this. So we're taking some of this federal money, and we're trying to take and give it back to businesses that we feel are the lifeblood of our community, the smaller businesses. We want to try to take and keep them alive, because we feel that in the future, they are the future as far as growth goes, and we want to try to keep them alive and give them every opportunity to survive this situation.
My other point was to talk to you about the water and sewer. Are the yellow tags that are going in the neighborhoods, is that the water and sewer? What's the yellow tag stand for?
The what?
There's yellow tags in the neighborhoods I see that are being positioned in the neighborhoods on the tree lawn. Is that and it's a yellow flag.
I guess.
Is that gas or is that water
There'd be
sewer?
some sort of marking,
Yeah.
I don't know, it could be, you'd have to look at the flag to see what the marking is, most likely gas.
Oh, okay.
It could be just about anything.
I thought maybe it was the water coming, the water.
If it was-
There's a
Yes,
whole
it'll
program
tell
that
you.
the county is looking at. We have some mains in the Beavercreek area. We have some major piping that we're looking at replacing because we're having problems with it, either with the piping and or the valves. So we will be doing that type of work.
First.
And we're looking at a major expenditure to do that. That type of work is not cheap to do. And so we're trying to take and head that, do maintenance, if you will, on that type of thing.
Well, I want to commend you and the rest of the county commissioners for that aggressive action on the water and sewer, because my main negative in Greene County is the water, is the hard water that we have. And so to get the reverse osmosis process going, and I know it is going to take time to get it cleared out of the pipes, but to have that process and get softer water in our community I'm very happy for.
It will help. Basically, most people will still, since they're used to zero soft water, they're still going to want their water softeners, but they won't have to regenerate nearly as often as they have in the past, because they're looking at anywhere from 25 grains hardness up. Okay, so if we can drop it down to 10, that's a major improvement in terms of the water quality that they will be receiving. And it should help them dramatically with their cost as far as salt.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions?
Mrs. Jean?
That is true about the soft water you were talking about, the running through the pipes. That will occur. I've seen it happen. But do you expect that, that's quite a bit of issue as far as for people. Is there going to be, things sent out to people to let them know?
Initially,
that, you might have an
basically,
issue?
initially our intent is to let people know that if they have a problem with a blockage, that it's probably going to be caused by that. We will come out and we will do something to help them solve the problem.
Yeah. You can clog up water softeners,
It-
faucets, toilets.
Initially it will cause problems. Long range, it will be a boon to help them with their water problems. Sometimes you have to bear the pain before you get to the good stuff.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you would, let people know that, hey, this could happen, if
We
this
intend
starts
to
to
do that
occur,
with
then.
mailings. We'll do
Yeah.
that with mailings. As we send out bills and things like that, as we bring this stuff online, we will be sending out information to let people know, that there's a potential for this particular problem. It depends on, we really don't know what how the dissolving is going to work. But one of the basic rules of chemistry is likes dissolve likes. So when we run soft water through pipes that have been aged and coated with calcium and magnesium, and some iron in some cases, it's going to dissolve that material and it's going to move it. And it will be moving it towards people's water softeners.
Yes.
It'll be a problem, I'm sure, but we'll get through it.
And my last question was that in the application for the small businesses, are other criteria that you'll look at when you get the applications back
It's going to be
For-
based on need.
based on need?
Based on need. And what we're trying to do is help those people that have been hurt the most, so to speak. And we want to try to take and be able to take businesses that are viable in the community. We want them to survive. The lifeblood of our community, if you will, is the small businessmen. And right now, they're the ones that have been hurt very seriously, and we want to try to help them in any way that we possibly can. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your information and pass it on to all our citizens.
Well, we hope so. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
having
Bob.
me. Take care.
And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, Mr. Wood.
You keep offering that.
Okay, moving on. We have any old business? I see none. New business, none. Green County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Board. First item is a memo from Sergeant Moore regarding some of the questions that came up at the last meeting. Sergeant Moore is here on Teams to go over the responses to the questions that were asked. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Saharian said, the memo that I provided, there is one correction in the first paragraph of reference to 108 arrests. That number is actually 103.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
I'm sorry. In the first paragraph of the memo, the number of 108 arrests should actually be 173.
Okay.
And just another addition of information, the 6 recorded use of force, 4 of those, as explained, will happen here in the township. The other 2 were outside of the township where he responded outside. Is the audio okay?
Yep,
Yes.
that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting feedback on my end, so I'm trying to talk. I apologize. And even according to that, for the Ohio incident-based reporting system, that's throughout the Ohio, all law enforcement reports. To that, you'll see that in all of those incidents, the total of 6, those were a display of weapon. The weapons were not utilized; they were only displayed only. And that is something that we track here at the Sheriff's Office. But according to the Ohio incident-based reporting system, that is not a use of force whenever a weapon is displayed. It's something we track. I took it for report. So essentially what you're looking at was 27,515 incidents, 173 arrests. The deputies out here were able to accomplish those safely with everybody involved, with virtually no response to resistance whatsoever.
Sergeant Moore, I appreciate you delving into this and answering the questions that I had asked. I think that for the citizens that are listening, these questions and answers are now on a public website with the Beavercreek Township. All the questions that I did receive from citizens have been addressed, and we are transparent in our reflection of the Sheriff's Department and the incidents that have occurred in the Beavercreek Township area. So if anyone has any other questions, you can get a hold of one of our trustees or directly with the Sheriff's Department. So thank you very much for taking the continued time to put this together, Sergeant Moore. Moving on to the rest of his biweekly activity report. Does anyone have any questions?
I do not.
I had no questions.
And on the monthly report?
I have no questions relative to the Sheriff's Office report.
Okay.
In its entirety. Thanks for your efforts, thanks for your hard work, and putting yourself on the line every day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Human Resources.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 62 of your packet, is the biweekly report for HR Department. Ms. Gustafson's here on Teams to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I have none.
I have none.
Thank you much for being here, and we have no questions for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item, we brought it up at the last meeting about adjustments to be made to the Beavercreek Township zoning fees. On page 65 of your packet is the red line version to show you the changes of what staff is recommending. Mr. McConnell's here to answer any questions. We also have a motion on page 66. Most of the changes are related to the sign amendments that the board already made earlier this year. So, Mr. McConnell?
Hello, board. Thank you for considering our request today. Do you have any questions about those changes?
Anyone have any questions?
I don't really have a question. I'll make I guess a comment. So relative to the combining the pool permit and the fence permit, there's obviously gonna be there's gonna be situations where individuals need to put up only a fence and without a pool. And so I'm assuming there will still be a fence permit, but now you're integrating essentially the fence requirement into the pool permit, so that when they pull a permit for a pool, it automatically stipulates that a fence is required. Is that correct?
Mr. Kretz, actually, currently they are combined, and what I'm seeking to do is separate them.
But from a standpoint
so
of,
that way, yeah, we could still have those situations where one needs just a fence or just a pool, has the other. But it also will allow us to hopefully avoid some of the situations we've had in the past where folks were able to obtain a pool permit with the promise to our office that, yes, the fence is coming, we're working with the contractor. Right now, our policy change is to not issue any pool permits without an associated fence permit already issued.
sure, I guess, and maybe I said it wrong. So it seems to me that our pool permit should have a fence requirement embedded into it. Because two things happen. One is if we require them to take 2 permits and we won't issue the pool without the fence, then why don't we simply make the pool include a fence?
That is how it is currently done. What I saw after coming into the office and dealing with some of these issues where residents just have pool with no fence, we found that having them combined, part of the way that the department, or it's just one of the ways that those things were able to easily slip past the department. Keeping them separate means we have 2 inspections that we can do on each, one for each. And so it's just a way to make sure our department is ensuring that fences are put up in a timely manner once the pool is installed.
The key is it's 2 separate inspections, and we want to be able to track both inspections. So just pulling one permit that includes both, we want to be able to inspect the pool, and then the fence upon completion, because there may be a delay between the 2. They usually don't go up at the same time. So what we're doing now in the office, what Mr. McConnell's talking about, is that we are now tracking all post inspections on the original permit form. So we've updated all those forms. Most of the forms are now online. But when we go out and actually inspect it to make sure it's compliant, that also allows us, if they have an open permit, that allows us the authority to go onto the property and do an inspection. If it does not, in other words, we don't have a separate tracking or it shows that it's been signed off, we legally don't have the authority to get on the property. So if the pool's done, we inspect it, sign the form, essentially we're signing off on the fence.
Right, and what I'm saying is that the pool isn't finished until the fence is erected, and then it's 1 inspection, not 2 inspections. And then the pool can't be used until the fence is up.
Well, and usually there are 2 separate contractors that come in.
I understand,
Yeah.
but it forces the issue. Because
Well,
otherwise I can open my pool on April 14th, and I can July 13th, I don't have to have my fence up yet.
Yeah, we can keep it the
And-
same. I'm recommending that we do make the change. And it's a compliance issue, and there's reason for the permitting process for that.
I understand, I'm saying that there's a fence permit for someone who just wants to put up a fence to contain their pet, or to keep other people's pets out of their yard. And then there is a pool permit, and what we've stipulated as of April 13th, that we've held to that, is that a fence is an integral part of a pool. You can't have a pool without a fence. And so, at that point, why wouldn't the fence be part of the pool permit?
Why sign off on the pool
Yeah.
if they don't have the fence?
The pool isn't complete until the fence. The reason it slips through now is because the pool's done. We go out, we inspect it, we say, it looks good. They start using it.
Well, then most of the time it's two separate contractors as well. So,
But that's not our problem.
well, I get that, but you're not gonna get a pool company to come in and pull a fence permit.
No, they're pulling a pool permit, and you're saying that the fence is an integral part of the pool.
I don't disagree, and there is there's going to be a
Because-
disclaimer on there that says you know.
But the disclaimer doesn't, whether it's been verbal or written in the past, it hasn't worked.
Because they don't have to come in and pull the fence permit later.
No, they have, so I think you're missing what we're saying here, is that if,
So they have to pull them both at the same time?
correct, and we're keeping it
And that one
separate.
would be
Right,
open, continue
Correct.
to be open.
correct.
But we actually have a situation of that now, where we had an individual pull
No, we
both
have-
permits.
Yeah, we have the permits, and it's gonna be a while till we get contractors out there. Not we, the homeowner. And
There's
we've
no,
been contacting contractors to clarify some of these delays that we're seeing.
yeah. We can have a separate conversation on it. I sent a note to Dawn this morning relative to the one on April 13th.
Right,
On April 27th, there were fence companies putting up fences in Beavercreek.
right. And we can't dictate to somebody
I understand.
what fence company to use. We can only say.
I'm not saying that we should, ever
We
should.
have to say that
They
it
could put up their own fence. We don't really care. What we're saying is that the pool isn't finished until the fence is up.
Right.
But the way we're doing it, we're saying the pool's finished when the pool's done. We'll inspect that and we'll sign off.
No, what we're saying is we'll show up, and if the fence is not up, you're not getting the inspection form on that or the fence.
Then why not make it one form? I don't understand.
Because we wanna be able to.
Because you're relying on procedure and human error to not come into play.
And that's why we're doing it. We're wanting to have those two separate forms to track it, and so we can say fence and pool. We wanna be able to track it internally.
So if somebody comes in and pulls a pool permit, they're required, and then before they get the pool permit, they're
Before they can
required to
occupy or
pool.
use their pool, they'll have to show that the fence is up and have that.
they'll have to have a permit for,
But you can't enforce that. That's unenforceable at that point, because there's nothing to say that, well, it's gonna take me a year to get my fence up, I'll do it next summer.
Why they swim in the pool the whole current summer. Which is the same thing they're doing now.
That's the situation we have now.
And that's right, because they put it up without our knowledge. They didn't have a pool permit. Now, we do have somebody who pulled a pool permit and didn't put a fence up, and we've given.
We've had it in
them
the
that.
past too,
Yeah.
right.
And those are documented when they're putting their fences up.
It just seems to me, and we're arguing to the same end, just different
Correct.
tactic to get to there.
Yeah.
So, and my philosophy is if you can combine two forms into one, because you can't have, if the fence is integral to the pool, then it should be part of that pool permit and inspection process. So, number one, we don't send staff twice. Guess what? We don't inspect your pool till the fence is up. Call us when the fence is up.
Right. And we wanna be able to track both separately.
But you don't have to track both if they're one.
No, I get it. I
Okay.
understand what you're saying. I'm just telling you
Okay.
what, internally for processing, this is what staff is recommending to make their jobs a little bit easier.
Okay, well, we can disagree and move forward, so that's fine.
any other,
Thank you both for that discussion. Are there questions about any of the other proposed, changes to the fee schedule that I entered?
As far as fees, do you have, I didn't see it in here, but,
I'm sorry, sir, I maybe lost you there.
you did lose me, I stopped talking, hold on one second.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just making sure I didn't see it somewhere else. So with, relative to our peer communities, where does this fee structure fall? I know we've looked at that in the past.
so we, in anticipation of this, did kind of a peer review, and actually our fees are on the high end for, any of the, similar or adjacent jurisdictions. We're in the top 10% on pretty much any type of permit you can name.
Okay. I know one of the issues that Greene County Regional Planning was addressing was essentially when contractors would make changes and essentially developing a fee structure around when either They would come in to resubmit because of timing or because of changes in a fee structure for that. I don't know if we really deal with that as a township, but on some of our bigger developments. So when Nathaniel's Grove is doing when they do a redesign, so our fee structure accommodates, we're recollecting a new fee for that new change. And is that fee adequate? That's my only questions, so. Because,
Let me just
and it,
take a quick here for you.
and I don't have the information from Greene County Regional Planning to compare it to at the moment, but,
So,
yeah.
PUDs, when we do a minor or whatever kind of modification, there are fees associated with that. It's a $300 fee for minor, $100 fee for major modification, amendments are counted. So we do have a fee structure in place to address when these kind of developers need our staff to come in, make recommendations, work with them. As to whether or not they're adequate, I honestly can't make that determination. I've not yet participated in one of these proceedings. I don't have an idea of what kind of staff time is required. That can be something that, when one comes up, can certainly keep our eyes on for that question.
Most of the modifications have been minor lately in the PUDs, so.
And I know we're going through a couple of them now where we've got, you know, a 1,000+ acre property or collection of properties. And we've got a project on one and we have a lot of staff time focused on that piece of it. So the PUD, you know, does the use fall within the PUD as part of it? And yes, okay, now develop the plan for that. So the fee structure for developing that plan on the subset of a master PUD. I'm just making sure that we're covering ourselves.
And that's one of the.
And it's hard, you want to encourage the development, but you also need to cover at least the base costs.
Yeah, and we have talked about looking at this fee structure more often. You know, these are, obviously the major change was because of the sign and then of course the recommendation by staff for the swimming pool. So we're gonna take a look at this and,
Yeah.
obviously, and it could be a student that helps us out on that, to look at and do comparables.
It's just it seems like most communities do it reactively after they spent a lot of resources on a project, and then maybe 10 years later, something will actually come along, versus if you can look ahead and see, okay, these are the big parcels that are gonna develop, what do we foresee, and then develop a strategy and some tactics from there.
Matt, I had a question on the bottom part of page 2. What was the rationale then of taking the fees off of land use plan and zoning resolution?
Our rationale there is that copies of those documents exist readily digitally online, and we would typically point folks towards that more as an environmental measure than anything. We try to avoid printing out large paper copies when we can. We also do feel like if a citizen insists upon a printed paper copy, we still can charge them 25 cents per page for copies, which could be, and end up being more than the old $25 charge. So we can still cover our costs if need be. We just don't anticipate that request ever, or very often, if rarely, so.
All right, well,
Going just to the 25 cents, it covers everything. If we expand the document, so, and as Max said, everything's online. And, I gotta hand it to staff. If you've looked at our community development and risk department's page, it is, all our forms are online now, easily submitted. I am working with Mr. Rushing on the next step, which would be allow online payments. So, not only take a national pandemic, but it's gonna be, easier for our developers to come in and submit house plans than it is now, where they have to actually come, deliver it, and then bring a physical check when they can do it online.
great.
And the other thing that helps us with also, not to get off subject, but having a room full of maps and site plans. If they upload them, they're digital for us, and we can store them on our server system in the cloud.
I'm sensitive to fees. I mean, we significantly increased the budget for that department, for the community development and risk department. So we relied upon that in the past, as far as our fee structure, to offset that expense. So we need every resource and every person that we have in the department, but I just want to make sure that we're when you have more resources, you also spend more resources on those projects, and I'm sure we needed to, from a developer's perspective, we needed to have more participants in that process, but there's a cost. So just make sure we're tracking it, because it seems like there's a potential, at least, that we will throw more resources at something than we may be able to afford to based on the budget we have. So.
Yeah, you know, in this case, we're using the technology that
Right.
we have.
It's hard. I mean, in the private sector, you would never send two people to do the same job.
Sure.
Ever. In the public sector, it's done routinely. So we just need to make sure we watch that.
Any other questions concerning the fee schedule?
Appears that we don't have any other questions, and I thank you for putting all this together. We have a sample motion
Yeah,
here.
there's a motion on page 68.
68.
I make a motion to amend the Beavercreek Township zoning fee schedule as submitted.
Second, with a question, are we approving the fee structure, or are we approving the modified?
Yeah, it's a modified.
The modified.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Are we relative to the pool and fence permit?
I believe you might be muted in the boardroom.
Yeah, it's the modified. It's just the red line sections.
So, but is it the fees only, or is it changing the policy as far as the
Well,
fence?
it's removing where any of the red line portions are, so some of the text as well.
Right, that's not my question. My question is on under the notes,
2A.
under the separate the combined pool fence permit and reduce the cost from 50 to 40.
Correct. That is
So, so it's separating those two?
correct.
Okay,
So everything on page 65,
so we have a second.
66, and 67.
Okay.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
No.
trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is a resolution accepting the donation of the Knox box that Mr. Kretz donated to the township. And you can just pass it as presented.
I'm sorry, guys, I keep losing you to mute.
The next one's the Knox box.
I don't think they can hear us. Sound is off.
We can hear you.
If they can't hear us, can anybody else hear us?
I make a motion to accept the resolution accepting the donation of a residential Knox box as presented.
I'll let you do that.
Second. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Wallace,
Yes.
trustee Kretz.
Abstain.
Thank you, board. Next item in your packet is the biweekly report starting on page 71. Are there any questions for Mr. McConnell?
I don't have any.
Can you hear us, Max?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I don't know if this question is for Mr. McConnell or for Mr. Zahariev. So relative to the pool fence issue, so that the board voted on April 13th. I've had two residents ask me when that will be enforced by the township. I explained to them what I had been told for the last month relative to some time was given based on COVID-19 and the governor's closure of non-essential businesses. I confirmed with Dawn, Ms. Frick this morning as far as the communications that we believe were sent to the residents. So, but I've got residents essentially that are asking, when and will that be enforced? Because in that situation, the pool has been open and being used. And so they're concerned, and that essentially could carry over into other people doing the same or similar thing. So just trying to catch it in the bud before it mushrooms out there. So when will that be enforced?
I'd be happy to answer that, Fred. So we have 3 properties in Woodridge that we've been working with. 355 Woodridge Boulevard, 1917 Hickory Knoll, and 1958 Hickory Knoll. We've since been in contact with the owners of each, and we do have a timeline for when they will have their fences put up. We've been hearing from residents and contractors alike that acquiring materials are an issue. We've been seeing delays in most types of home improvement. In fact, I believe Mr. Glazer indicated the amount of home renovation projects that are being completed during this pandemic. But so for 345 Woodridge, the contractor, Cedar Grove Fence, said that the installation would be mid-July. We're actually going to reach out to them. We were unable to get a hold of them today. We will reach out to them again tomorrow. For 1917 Hickory Knoll, the Pedons, we have roughly until the beginning of September is when they told us their contractor was able to get a fence in. And for the Begleys at 1958 Hickory Knoll, we anticipate early August for when the fence company can install the fence. I can tell you that our line has been to work with folks through this as they've been experiencing issues with contractors, but now that they've given us a date, we will be aggressively pursuing enforcement action if after that date the fence is not put up as it was indicated it would be. We realize this is a safety issue. We're trying to walk the line between that concern and the concern of maintaining good relationship with our residents, understanding the difficulties of the pandemic and what that's done to the supply chain for materials. So hopefully that answers your question as to our enforcement efforts. We're pursuing each one. We have dates for when we expect the fence to be up, and we will be monitoring that and enforcing the next level of enforcement actions if those dates aren't adhered to.
No, I appreciate the feedback. So it's not to be clear, it's not my desire. To be clear, it's not my desire or intent for the zoning department essentially to become the pool fence police. My broader concern is to make sure that from a township perspective, whenever we've been inconsistent in the past as a township, that's when it came back to bite us. And so I want to make sure that we handle this in a manner consistent with how we've handled previous situations that are similar or the same. So that we're dealing with everyone from the same level playing field. It's not to isolate or call out one specific situation, but it's to make sure that, a couple of years ago we dealt with a very almost identical request, and we were much more diligent in pursuing resolution and correction to that one. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Mr. Harriet?
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 82 of your packet is the biweekly report for IT. Are there any questions?
I had none.
Mr. Harry, if I've put in now 2 phone calls, with 0 return calls from back to business relative to changing the password on my device.
Yep, and we had a conversation with one of the bosses on Friday. Nathan and I had, usually we have a bi-weekly meeting. Friday afternoon, Chief Easter and I voiced our concerns on that. Memos going out to call people. They have, for the elected officials, and more for the trustees, you are not connected to the Active Directory. So right now on my device or Mr. Rushing's device, we can alternate no delete, change our password, and then it all connects at some point. Because you're not connected back to the server, they have to make, back to business has to make those changes and then inform you of what that change is. And I said, this is the second time this has happened. Ms. Wallace called one day and said, hey, I need to change my password. They said, yeah, just alternate no delete. And we made a special note then for their call takers.
She got more than I've gotten, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
not-
it. They
I've
did
not-
it the same day.
I've not gotten a return phone call.
So, I will follow up tomorrow with
Wait,
them.
have
but,
the wrong
yeah,
number.
it was
No,
brought up.
Left his voicemail.
That's
at
what they told me when the email thing happened. I talked to them, but they couldn't do anything.
Right, and they should be, at least for the 3 of you, or if Mr. Rushing's not connected back to the server, they should be able to do that remotely. I don't have the privileges to do that, so no one in the township, because we have to change it, Office 365 and then Active Directory, so you can at least connect back to the server.
Yeah.
So
And-
yes,
and
we
obviously-
passed on our
and we don't have,
displeasure.
we don't have the ability to do it ourselves. The concern is obviously someone was spoofing my email address.
Right.
And so when that happens, and I call and say, hey, I need to change this because someone is spoofing my email and sending emails as though they were me.
It
it's-
should happen quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
follow up. We just had the meeting,
Okay.
1:30 on Friday, and voiced our concerns about that.
okay. Otherwise, I have no questions.
Do you have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Board. Just one quick item. We do have a public hearing notice that went out to start the public hearing at 6 o'clock. So I'd recommend in the future we'll probably push these to 6:30. Didn't know about the special guest today, but so, and I'm not blaming that. It's just we'll move them to 6:30. But I would recommend that we go ahead and open the public hearing and talk through that. In case anybody shows up, anybody's out there.
No one's in the hall?
No one's in the hall?
Okay, I can,
Do we need to recess the one we're in? Do we need to, take a
No.
recess? Okay.
No, we're right into it.
So
All we
we-
have to do is bring the public hearing to order, and then move the public hearing notice.
we have a public hearing notice, Beavercreek Township Trustees Zoning Commission Case Number 814. The Beavercreek Township Trustees are holding a public hearing on Monday, July 13th, 2020, scheduled to begin now at 6 o'clock. The meeting will be held here in the community room at 2195 Dayton Senior Road. The purpose of the hearing is so the trustees may review and act on one or more proposed amendments to the Beavercreek Township zoning resolution being proposed by the zoning commission. The proposed amendments would create a new zoning district classification known as a highway business overlay district. No parcels will have their zoning classification altered at this time. The zoning commission triggered action by the trustees via zoning commission case number 814.
Thank you, Board. On page 101, is the information regarding the public hearing, and the proposed language that the zoning commission, on page 102, that they recommend approval. This is not red line or color, because this is all new, so everything's, obviously, there's no changes. This would be an addendum. We did provide a sample map of the area on page 109 of the highway overlay district and the parcels that would affect. after we pass, the highway business overlay district, we will then have to come back to the board and provide the parcel numbers that are actually in the overlay district. So you have to pass the language first, and then we have to come back and recommend these parcels. So that's why it's a sample map. And I understand that there might have been a question at the Regional Planning Commission as well regarding the boundary. So we provided a sample map of what we think the boundary will be. There'll be some parcels that will be in. The other thing we are going to do before we bring those parcels back is obviously meet with the major landowners in that district, just to make sure that they are comfortable being in and they'll have the option of opting in or out. The board has the ability, though, to say you're in or out as well. So I'll turn it over to Mr. McConnell for answer any questions.
Thank you, board. Are there any questions that I can answer about the proposed language?
I guess not so much a question, but just a comment. Just in discussions with Mr. Amrine in the past, and also I think with Mr. Zaharieff, relative to, it seems as though we should not be including restrictions or provisions that we don't already approve through the BZA process. So, and I'll simply use pylon sign height as one discussion item, but it's a broader concern. When I built my storage facility on Orchard Lane in 2012, I was restricted to 22 feet in overall height for that pylon sign. And it was discussed and debated that I was restricted to that because other signs were, other businesses along that same corridor were restricted to that same height. Over time, we have approved from a BZA standpoint, to my knowledge, up to I think 26 feet high. We have one sign that we is theoretically grandfathered in, I guess.
Yeah, so that sign, you have 30 days to be, so in other words, if I change the order and change the signs, if they didn't get the sign changed to the new logo, and if it was past 30 days, they would have to come back in and
Sure.
go through the BZA process. Because at that point, they would be subject to a ground sign.
But I guess my question is, or my comment is more from a signage standpoint, from a setback, from the number of auxiliary buildings that you can have on a parcel. I just go back through some of the issues that I dealt with at the time where I was going to build 9 buildings, so one is a primary, 8 of them were considered auxiliary buildings, and so I had to go to the BZA for that. I had to go to the BZA for setback requirements and essentially other businesses in the area, they contend with the same issues. So I'm just asking, when we define things like sign height, setback, square footage of signage on the frontage or the 3 sides of a building, or total and cumulative square footage, or signage on a canopy, if it's a service station, that's really stipulated by their brand. When I go to Hilton Head Island, it's interesting because they have the most vanilla signage anywhere I've seen in the country. Every sign is the same color, every sign is the same height, and frankly, it's very difficult to find a business unless you have Google Maps tell you to turn right, or turn here, or turn there. So they've really made branding, they've diluted it down. So I understand, and I'm appreciative that you're bringing this forward. I would ask that we're conscious of routine requests to the BZA over the last 10 years and how the BZA responded to those requests, and in many cases granted those variances. So if we're granting variances on a regular basis, it seems to me that we should be including the majority of those most likely in this new text. I don't know how the other, I don't know how the other trustees feel about that, so.
If you're granting requests consistently all the time, maybe the limitations are too great or too high?
So the intent of any amendment change is based on BZA. So if you have continuum where the BZA is offering variances on a regular basis, then that tells us, as staff, there's something wrong with the code section,
Yeah.
the resolution section. So in this case, we had discussion with, staff did, I was not involved in it, because my job is to advise you, not the zoning commission. They presented several options to the zoning commission. The zoning commission then says, well, this is what we think we're comfortable with recommending to the Board of Township Trustees. Now, this right here is a recommendation for approval. Your position is to either approve it as is or make changes or recommend changes or passively changes. So, and that's why I do not attend the zoning commissions, because my job is to advise you, not the zoning commission staff does that. And I know that discussion probably came up, and I'll let Mr. McConnell talk about that with the zoning commission.
Yes, Mr. Kreister, that's your comment. That was the initial impetus for including a sign height change within the language of the HBO. We did notice that the Board of Zoning Appeals was consistently granting sign height variances. So we decided to include a blanket height. Now, it was said, again, recommended by the Zoning Commission at 15 feet within the language. If the board would like to amend that to a taller sign height or any other section that we'd like to see different, we will certainly make those changes, and that is within what you can do. Some other issues that we noticed were increased permeable surface coverage, something that we made provisions for within the language. We increased that. We decreased the voluntary side setback requirement that are found within a lot of our districts. But I think something that it should be noted is that much of the underlying, the setbacks, the landscaping requirements, parking lot requirements, things like that, much of that is tied to the underlying base zoning district. So if a property is zoned, for instance, I-1, they will still have the same setback requirements, the same parking lot requirements, the same uses, permitted uses and things like that that come with I-1. They will just have some additional leeway with the height of their sign, or for instance, having a little bit more room to put permeable surfaces on their lot. There will also be some additional restrictions that we would put on, for instance, certain properties. You'll notice that abut the Creekside Trail bike path. When they have a specific site plan submission, that site plan would need to include some sort of screening for the bike trail. So there is some give and some take, mostly give, I think, but we thought that, again, just in the process going through regional planning with other stakeholders like Miami Valley Regional Planning, we added some of these protections which will help guide the growth that we want to see while also maintaining the character of our community.
Okay, so, relative to specific, if theoretically in a light industrial zoning situation or setting, the side yard setback was something other than 10 feet, the highway business overlay would overrule that and make it 10 feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if it's
Planned
stipulated.
unit developments, which the planned unit development rules take precedence over any HBO requirements.
Okay, and I'm just going back several years when we started this conversation, that it was the spirit of taking this on was to essentially.
And that was a recommendation from regional planning, essentially, planned unit developments being very thought out at the onset.
Right.
So that's, oh, you guys are muted again, so I'm sorry if you're speaking to me.
Yep, no problem. So I'm just gonna go back a couple of years, when we, like 2016, when we first started really talking about this or kicking it around. The concept was to try to use this as a net to also clean up a few issues. So relative to any text amendments that would be for the specific zoning sections, those will be handled separately. You're not encompassing all of that into this. So where we have businesses that have gotten a variety of variances in this overlay map, theoretically, we're not trying to catch those all now. Because the only things I'm really seeing addressed are side yard setback and sign height from a requirement standpoint, not a procedure or how things move and flow.
That is.
One of the,
Go ahead, Max.
one of the major changes that we did include, and this goes to the procedure aspect, was within the HBO, we would now require the specific site plan review process for each new building that would be built within the HBO. So this is designed to help require businesses to go through a little bit more of a closer look from our office during the planning phase. And that is designed to help catch some of the issues that maybe we've seen in the past. We recognize that some of the underlying base zoning district language itself needs work. That is part of the multi-year plan that this office has for updating zoning resolution. This project, this highway overlay business district, I know has been on the burner for quite some time. And so it was our desire to get something skewed up, accomplish much of what you see, while also leaving room for work on underlying base districts.
Okay. Before I ask the question, I'll give you a few minutes to think about it, because I'll pose a question, then I'll give you a few minutes to think about it, and then I'll ask a few other questions in between. So the real question I have is, what have you made easier for the businesses in this corridor? So you can think about that and respond. But if I go back to when we were talking about putting a Texas turnaround, and we were talking about elevating, having an overpass and an underpass, and that we still discuss collectively as a county that that's our long-term goal, is to eliminate those lights at those intersections. One of the things we talked about, I'm not harboring on, but I am harboring on sign height. Because one of the things the businesses complained is we were gonna put the highway, the grade was gonna be 26 feet, and our signs were limited to 22 feet in overall height.
Right.
And the businesses on one side couldn't see the businesses on the other, and traffic wouldn't be able to see signs on both sides of the highway. We talked at that time about Miller Lane as an example. And on Miller Lane, the pylon height restriction is 60 feet. And so we said, okay, do we want to look like Miller Lane, or do we want to look like something in between? And so preserving the look of Beavercreek Township and preventing it from, or at least slowing it down from, becoming something like that, I don't see this corridor converting necessarily to a Miller Lane. But if the long-term objective is still, if and when the funding or financing could ever be there to, and with a different administration, different people at a federal level, things could change. Money could free up for infrastructure. So why would we restrict people to a height that would be below what we already know that grade would be? If we did an overpass or an underpass. The second thing with regards to side yard setbacks, and I don't know if Mr. Amrine's on here or not. Okay, but one of the things that we dealt with, and to be clear, I no longer own, my wife or I no longer own that storage facility. We sold it in 2017. But one of the things that we had to deal with on a side yard setback was a 10-foot setback sounds very reasonable, except when there's a 50-foot radius requirement in a corner. And so when you take that 50-foot radius, it truly restricts how your ability to push a building to one side of the property or another. And the reason for the 50-foot radius was so that you could get a fire engine around that building, so I understood it. But we ended up getting a variance for that. And so just, is the 10-foot setback, is there any change to the 50-foot radius, or is it strictly just a 10-foot side yard setback?
In the language, there is no change to the radius.
Okay.
It'd be certainly something that could be, ended into.
I would be curious how many times that's, a variance for that's been requested and or approved or denied. So that would kind of lead you to a conclusion of whether you should address it or not. I only know of one, I know mine, so.
And what we did was go back and look at the history, and then go back and look at all the minutes from all the work sessions, especially the work session between the Board of Township Trustees and at the time the zoning commission, obviously different players other than Mr. Prince, and maybe one or two on the zoning commission. So, staff went back and pulled everything that we talked about and tried to incorporate everything to recommend to the zoning commission and of course regional planning commission. To address your sign height issue, that's why we made the amendment in here to, if it stays at the 15 feet, it's 15 feet from the US 35 road pavement. So if this road increases in height, the sign, they can come in to the township and ask for it instead of going back for this into a variance process. And that was heard loud and clear in our work sessions with the businesses, is that what they didn't want to do is they got a variance for sign height currently, and then turn around and when US 35 is completed and come back. So what we tried to do with this document is make it kind of automatic that if the bridge went up overnight, if there was a stimulus package and it's a shovel-ready program, that overnight, in a year and a half or 2 years, there's a 30-foot bridge in front of their business, that they will be able to come in and staff would be able to approve it without taking any administrative actions.
Right. I can tell you that when I did own that property, and the notion of the highway being 26 feet higher than where it is today, I did get a quote on raising my sign, and ultimately I couldn't. I had to replace it because the foundation wouldn't support the height. And so what I would propose relative to sign height is that we first look at what's the highest sign that we have permitted. As far as, not from a grandfather clause in a billboard sign, I'll call
Sure,
it.
staff has that.
But in general, it was 22 feet to 23 feet. And so I would say that take the 22 to 23 feet, add 15 feet to it, and permit that. Because otherwise what you're saying is that someone has to, if they raise the highway, then we'll let them spend money to raise their sign.
So that is the difficulty, and that is the concern that.
So why not make it 40 feet or 39 feet right from the start?
That's what the whole Miller Lane argument came up years ago, that if we allow it now.
Miller's 60, right.
Right, and let's say we say 60. And
That's
so everybody puts 60-foot signs up, it'll be Miller Lane, and the bridge never gets built. At least I'll guarantee not in my lifetime, but I don't wanna put money on that, but, you have these tall signs out there, and we do look like Miller Lane.
But then
So
what's,
that was
yeah.
the concern, I think, of the zoning commission, concern of, the BZA when they were granting, and I was on the BZA when we granted some of these, and, that was brought up. I will tell you, in the 2 cases I was involved with on the Board of Zoning Appeals, they were coming in going, no, we should have the 60-foot or the 40-foot sign now, because, just as you said, Mr. Pretz, I've gotta put a bigger foundation in.
Right.
And I gotta be ready for this bridge.
It's a 60-foot sign is a $100,000 sign.
Right.
So a 22-foot sign is a $30,000 sign. Been there, done it. So
I agree.
the other thing is we're extending the overlay map. We're not voting on that necessarily, but we've got a proposed map that includes businesses that are not fronting the highway. And so if we have, and we're lucky to have, we have a fantastic company building a new facility on Valley Springs. But what if it was a retail type operation that needed highway signage? A 15-foot sign, you wouldn't see it. You'd have to turn down Valley Springs to even know it was there. So I'm just trying to think through from a business perspective. My gut feel is that 60 feet is too high, but I also feel that 22 feet is too low. And so I would like to see it in the 35 to 40 foot range, so that a business that is off the highway does have some visibility. So we're trying to mature this overlay zone and get it developed, and we've got good land to do it. And we don't give them any other economic assistance. So allowing them to build a sign to advertise their company, if that's economic assistance.
We have a business that's in that corridor who wants to move across the street into the township, so they can just put a 22-foot sign up.
Right.
Or 15.
Well, they'd have to go get a variance if we pass
Right
this.
now they'd have to
Right.
get a variance, but, you know, they're looking at land in the township just so that they can put a taller sign up. And his argument to me, or that business argument to me is, and that's not our issue, that's the city of Beavercreek issue, is that the city of Beavercreek allowed to put that
Right.
big LED sign up, and his business is 6 foot, or whatever theirs is, off the ground. So-
Right, and the LED is the measuring stick that, in my opinion, whether it's in the city or it's at the township's gate, it's right there. And so that is the measuring stick that everyone is looking to and saying, okay, why can't I do what it
They
says,
have it.
what says the city of Beavercreek on top of it?
And I've had that from a business owner.
More than one.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no, I've had from a business owner in the township and a business owner in the city,
Right.
who said, oh, wait a second, you're telling me I have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, get a sign height variance, but I go look at that LED, which is, welcome to Beavercreek Township signs right there. You know, so, yeah, sometimes.
But they're
it's-
only allowing two, they only allowed two.
Correct. Now, there are some limitations in regards to ODOT, on regards to the size, in LED, and that's why they're, spaced out the way they are on US 35. So, and I believe, the last time I looked at it, there could be another one in the township, but further to the east.
Right.
So, right. So I don't disagree.
But this doesn't change our LED language.
No, it does not.
Relative to.
No.
This just addresses.
Changeable
sign height,
signs.
that would be allowed separate from anywhere else in the township. So, yes, if we're looking on, Trayvine for a potential commercial business to go there, yes, they're limited to the regular sign resolution that's in place. What we were trying to do in regards to staff recommending to the zoning commission, and the reason we have work sessions in the past between the Board of Township Trustees and the zoning commission, is to look at the fact that that is special district because of the highway. And to address, you know, sign
The
heights down
issues.
there. And to look back at what the Board of Zoning Appeals has done. Forget the tall one, that one's right before my time. But if you look at the other ones, the BZA has been consistent, allowing greater height along the highway.
But their maximum height so far has been 22 feet.
Mr. McConnell, I think it is 22 feet is the highest that the BZA's approved.
That BZA is approved, as far as I'm aware, yes.
So 22 is the highest that they've approved.
So if we did change the height as Mr. Kretz is indicating, then that would have businesses currently running to put up a 30 or 40 or 50-foot sign, when we don't have any
If
construction going on.
If it made sense to them to do it, it has to make economic sense. But like I said, they're not, a 40-foot, a base built for a 22-foot sign typically is not
Not
gonna
gonna
support
support
a 40-foot sign. So you're talking a whole new, you have to excavate the sign you have and put in a new one. And we still are only allowing one of those per property. So it's not like they could go put up a second one. So it's really for the new development. So
And
I-
the
I'm-
township is understandable, I guess, is the word, probably a better word for that, but that there are certain branding requirements, franchises. So not only does it include the sign, but it also includes what's on their building. So, you know, that's the other thing that we kind of took a look at here, is that we know that, you know, unfortunately, someone locally who wants to put something up in this district, it's also gonna be mandated by
doesn't work in Hilton Head. But-
Correct, I get
But
it.
I don't believe, at least I don't want Beavercreek Township to be that restricted.
Yeah.
No.
So,
And there's other communities that
You
will
can't find
not,
it.
they won't grant anything
Dublin.
within the 6 foot
Dublin, yeah.
period,
Mm.
you know, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that. I think for us, as we looked at that highway area, we have, and the Board of Zoning Appeals has allowed, because of just the uniqueness of the highway being there, to allow sign heights higher in that corridor. Now, what we wanna do is allow it to be an administrative action in regards to staff, regardless of, you know, whatever
Versus
you guys
appeal.
agree, as opposed to going to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which, in this case, the Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi judicial board that, you know, all staff can do is make recommendations for approval.
Mhm.
You know, with the zoning commission process, the board has the final say. The Board of Zoning Appeals, the final say is either referendum or, to the court, common pleas court.
so,
So are you proposing a change in height then?
yeah,
I would
I'm okay
agree
with
with
everything on here except the height. I would propose we change the 15 to 40.
How do you feel about that?
I would agree with increasing it, maybe 40 max, not like 40 from the pavement, from the grade.
40 from the grade, not from the grade of 30, well, do you say from the grade of 35 or the grade of,
So you got, the grade is, 20 feet, then you're at 60.
well, a ground sign is stipulated as 6 feet from grade, not 6 feet from grade of the highway. So the 40 feet, in my opinion, would be no different than a monument sign.
Okay.
You
I
would,
would-
it's 6 feet from grade of that property without a beauty mound.
Yeah, you know, the reason why we did 35 was to address the current
Right.
concern from the business owners if the highway went in.
But if this is to benefit or to stimulate growth and development in that area, we're already, even if we made it 22 feet, we're saying that
prevent-
if that ever happens, the new business has to tear down their sign and put up a new one.
Then that's, yeah,
So,
they would have to do that.
yeah, that's, good point, Mrs. Dean, as far as the grade comment. So I think both the ground sign, and I'll use the term monument signs, that's what I use on an everyday basis. So a monument sign should be no higher than 6 feet from grade. And whatever pylon height should be 6 feet, should be whatever the height is, in this case, since we're going above as a provision, I would say 40 feet, but 35, I don't know what the magic number is, but it's more than 15.
Yeah.
And to me, it should be more than 22, or you need to tighten up the map, because you're essentially trying to help a business on Valley Springs who you can't see from the highway. You can't see them from the intersection. The only way you would know that business is there, you'd have to turn there, see it on Google Maps, or if there was a pylon that allowed you to see it. So,
And we certainly could limit, because the map is not final, so if you did make that change, the next thing the board would have to consider is what parcels to put in there that makes sense to have a sign.
And
the
I-
board agrees to. So does it make sense on Factory, does it make sense, around the airport? Of course, the airport's a different story because they would have to meet whatever regulations.
they would have FAA.
FAA, yeah.
But that's actually pretty loose.
It
The
is
line of-
pretty
the
loose,
flight
but,
line.
yeah, as long as it's not the flight line kind of thing. But same thing we did with the PUD at Valley Springs, when, when the zoning commission was, trying to put all the regulations in there, we said, listen, all you need is 174, it says, it needs to be approved by the FAA, so we're not gonna limit building height in the PUD, we're gonna limit it to the approval of the FAA process.
Right.
So if
Right.
they say, yeah, you can put a 6-foot building in, you don't have to put a 6-foot building.
Right, but if you have a 4-story building go up on Valley Springs, a 40-foot sign is gonna look tiny.
I agree.
So, and we haven't restricted the building height, so it's very possible you could have that. If there's ever this is a bad time right now for hospitality business in general, but it won't be for the rest of our lives, so.
Yeah, I envision a hotel in the area, and if, you know, the biggest thing with hotels is that whatever the top floor is gonna have signage on it, as well as a sign out front. And we've allowed that. We've allowed that with other businesses down there, as you know, if you can see. And some of it is mandated by corporate, some of it is, local business choice.
Now, like I said, I would change 15 to 40, but from grade of that parcel.
I don't have a problem with that.
I would be shocked if businesses that had signs today started running out, changing them. It's a major investment. It doesn't mean they won't. They could get their brand to pay for it. So I get that. That's the only change I would recommend.
Any other questions for staff?
Well, Ms. Dean, do you have any?
I don't have any additional
Changes?
question. I would agree with the change in the allowable height of the sign.
I had a question on number 5 on page 105. I am a big advocate for more handicap parking. And even though usually businesses are dictated by the parking requirements set by the state, in my prior life in the city of Beavercreek, we expanded. I finally was an advocate enough after 8 years to expand the number of handicap parking spaces for businesses because of the aging of our community. So in this highway business overlay, I would propose to have an increase in handicap parking as a start in the township.
I guess what I would piggyback on is why don't we just do that across the board on all?
That'd be great for me. I think that's a fantastic idea.
We could definitely look at that.
So that way
This was just on the agenda, and so I
Right.
figured I would take that
If that's
to
something the
another.
board, wants to look at, we could definitely look at that in each district and allow.
It's the only way I'll be able to get my dad and mother-in-law to use one. So he's 87, she's 92, and they won't park in one because they're afraid they'll take it from someone that needs it.
We could definitely do that. So the problem is putting it in here, we're only limited to, at the end of the day, when the board officially approves the parcels that go in here, then they're the only ones subject to it. If we go back and look at, and we could do a blanket across the whole.
That's fine with
Yeah.
me.
That's what
I
I would
just
do.
didn't, since this was the issue of
Sure.
the day, I wanted to address it here. If we can go backwards and look at, because you know.
You could do a text amendment essentially that would address that.
I have no,
Correct.
that'd be fine, because we doubled it in the city of Beaver Creek.
Yeah, we can do that.
And
Yeah, I'd be
it makes a
fine.
difference, and especially we lean toward medical facilities especially.
And looking at what we did in front of the administrative building, we were within code. However, we said, no, we want to increase the spot, and then the spot we created was van,
Mhm.
accessible. So we not only put another spot in, but we took in consideration that,
A van needs more
vans,
space.
so that we could have, wheelchair access from a van, have a little more room, because if you're putting it right next to a regular parking spot, it's not gonna work. for
Right, you have to have that.
Design vans, but.
Well, I don't have any problem with that then, if you
Okay.
want to look at it
Yeah,
that way.
we'll have staff look at that and get something in front of the zoning commission.
Okay. And I have no other additions or comments on, I just want to comment to staff that I think you guys have done a great job. It's been a long process since I became on this board. We've heard of the Highway Overlay District, and it's nice to be able to see the documentation in its current form. So thank you.
Board, what we need to do is, now is open the public hearing portion to the public to see if there's any comments.
Okay. So is there anyone in the public that wants to make a comment on this case? Please let us know and give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. And seeing no one, we have no one that came online?
Are we still accepting online?
No,
Okay.
Oh, okay, then,
it's all in person.
all, There is no one here to address that. We'll move to closing the public portion of the hearing. And any more discussion among the board?
Only other question, and I'm not proposing that we necessarily make that change today because we could amend it later, I assume, as well, but at one point, and this is maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the discussion was to take the north boundary all the way to Dayton Xenia.
I do remember that.
And so was there a reason that they brought it back south?
So the zoning commission, at the time when we were discussing it after the work session, they felt more comfortable with Creekside Trail.
Okay.
Just because of some of the uses along Dayton Xenia.
Okay.
Some more of the residential, neighborhoods that actually touch Dayton Xenia Road. They did say, hey, Creekside's a perfect line to go all the way across the township, the old railroad tracks, from east to west in regards to the unincorporated area of the township, and use that as the line.
Okay. Is there any discussion about carving in Orchard up to Space Drive? Because we have the parcels that are on the north side of, that are on Space, that are on the north side of the Creekside, that had been for sale for a long time.
Yes, and, you know, we have
You also have,
attempted a
you also
couple
have that
times
part,
to-
you have that empty parcel that's next to, used to be the carpet distributors, or the empty parcel, I think the dialysis group, can't remember which medical group owned that. Yeah.
Premier does, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just curious if we could do if we would consider a carve-in up to Space, and then maybe the south side of Space Drive, those empty lots. The north side is already developed of Space, but that south side, including the old driving range.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that one and bring parcels to you. Just to let you know, staff has attempted over the last several years to reach out, to, maybe go through a process of amending that PUD. In the industrial park, that was the township's first, industrial park PUD, and there are some restrictions there that, I think in today's market, does not make sense. So we have attempted to say, hey, you know, we'll even recommend it coming from top down, but we want to just sit down and have that conversation to see what are some of the restrictions in that current PUD that is preventing some of those lots to be sold, or preventing other businesses moving in some of the vacant buildings. So that is something we want to continue to do. It's just unfortunately, we have to have an applicant.
I guess I would like to see it go up Orchard to Space, turn the corner, essentially include south all the way back to Sunoco Products. And then that would encompass that whole area there. And a good portion of what's already in this is light industrial or heavy industrial use.
Right.
So it makes, to me, it makes sense to stretch it just to the south parcels and the parcels on the east side of Orchard Lane. South side of Space, east side of Orchard.
Excellent. I'll make that note, thank you.
So the second part of this.
That was my opinion. I don't know what your
No,
opinion
I like that idea.
Agree.
You want to close the.
So,
public
the
hearing?
second part of this will be to add the parcels, correct? So
Correct.
today,
So-
we're just going to, we have a sample resolution of the document itself.
Right.
Did we close the public portion?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Get a gavel and
So
everything.
now would be,
We
any
had our
changes that
discussion.
you want to make to the sample resolution?
I think the changes have been noted.
Yeah, just the sign height, the grade issue, to make sure it's in the grade of that. Just the same grade we would stipulate for a monument sign, the 6-foot monument sign. And then the consideration of the parcels on the east side of Orchard and the south side of Space, back to Sunoco Products.
Yeah, that's a separate.
Okay. Just when we have that, if we're gonna have that map in there, then we should have it.
Yeah, the map is not a part of the resolution.
Okay.
That was
Right.
just a sample map,
Just to get us a
kind of
feel.
show you the area that we are looking for the HDO.
And with regards to the map itself, when will that come back to us? Because without the map, it doesn't do a lot of good.
Right, so what our intent is as staff is to reach out to a lot of the businesses, start talking to them about this, and give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I want in, or we have no interest in it. So that we're not, you're not really forcing it on them, we're having them more involved in the process, and then we can come to you and say, we've talked to the businesses, they're okay with this, they're ready to move forward with being a part of HBO. You could,
If you approach it that way, and that business sells that property 5 years from now, then the new owner would have to come back and appeal to be included, to be added to
yeah,
it.
would have to ask you to be added to the.
Which would be up to the board at that time
Right.
to
It'd be
approve
up
it
to
or
the
not
board,
approve it,
that's-
versus kind of like a TIF doing an overlay, and then saying if you can benefit from it, you can.
You're in.
You're in.
Well, and the same in the TIF, we lay out the parcels that are in.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if we establish the boundary, and then it's essentially an opt-in, because if you don't need it or don't want it, you
Correct.
won't do it.
Right,
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah, we could bring this as early as next month to you. If you say, hey, we don't need to talk to the businesses, but, we want to be.
I like the idea of having the overlay in,
and then,
and then saying, hey, you're in, or it doesn't, you don't have to do anything special.
there's the flexibility you
Yeah.
have going forward if you need it.
We can
Right.
have a list of parcels at your very next meeting, if that's the case.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay. Then we're at a resolution. Somebody want to make a motion?
So are we gonna approve this today, or are we gonna make changes and bring it back?
Don, can we, bring it back next meeting for final approval? With the changes?
What you can do is table it, to close the public portion, you table it and, forget at the next meeting.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so make a motion to table.
we got a motion to table.
I'll make a motion to table this matter until our next meeting.
Second?
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, board.
Thanks, Max.
And then I need a motion to adjourn the,
Thank you, board.
No, we don't have to.
no, adjourn the public hearing? Okay.
All right, thank you, board. Back to road.
It was a long road to roads.
Yeah.
Next
All right.
item is, on page, 85. This is a then and now purchase for the cables, replacement for station 61. Looks like Tim is on here to answer any questions you may have. We have a motion, and I have a purchase request.
I may have a question. I make a motion to approve a then and now purchase request 10820 to All American Fire Equipment for replacement of aerial cables for ladder 61 in an amount not to exceed $11,000, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is a purchase request for Station 61 painting project. Budget justification is on page 85 with the supporting documentation on 87. And Mr. Marks is here to answer any questions.
I had a question, Mr. Parks. Approximately, how much square feet of painting are we looking at having done?
I checked off the top of my head, but it's the whole banking area, stairs going down, off things in the basement, and then the Sally Port area and those hallways there, so it's quite a bit of square footage.
Okay. And do you know what, kind of paint they're recommending, or have they recommended? Where they're gonna purchase the paint from? Is that, the paint is part of this bid, is that correct?
That is correct, and give me just a sec. It's either gonna be Sherwin-Williams or Porter PPG paint.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm happy with that. Anybody else have any questions regarding this request?
Mr. Parks, are they only painting walls?
They're painting wall ceilings, the iron bay area, and all the door frames and doors in all those spaces.
Okay.
And the pipes, correct?
And the pipes, they're actually part of the ceiling.
Okay, yeah, because they're all rusted.
Okay. Two questions. One would be to just inquire if, with whoever you go with, if they're using a PVC, I can't think of the term, but essentially where it's almost like a rubberized paint where it's washable on the walls, and the second is on the ceiling if it's a dry fall.
Okay, we sure will do that.
So, only because I've painted the interior of buildings similar to that, and the mistake of not using dry fall is expensive. So, what happens is if it were to drip, it dries before it hits the ground, and so you sweep up the dust. You don't have to use thinner to clean the floor or your equipment.
Well, that's why I wanted to know what kind of paint was being used.
So just questions. So, and if they're not using dry fall, then obviously, are they responsible for for all cleanup of the floors?
Yes, they are.
Okay, that's all that matters. I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 10821 to Midwest Painting for the painting of, which station is this, Mr. Parks? 61?
Station 61.
Okay, for the painting of Station 61 Bay Area, Sallyport, and adjacent hallway in an amount of $22,860, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 88, bi-weekly report. Are there any questions for Mr. Parks?
I had no questions.
Mr. Parks, I had someone ask me a question, or maybe it's Mr. Rushing, I'm not sure who, relative to cemetery plots. The comment was made, and I think it was triggered by the cemetery that is on the corner of Fairfield Road and Indian Ripple having a sign out in front of it that says, "We have lots for sale." They had a yard sign in the cemetery that said lots for sale. So that triggered a question of, do we have a database? Do we even have any requests of individuals that own plots that want to sell them in our cemetery?
We actually do on occasion have some people come in and want to sell lots to someone else. But most of our, I'll call it advertisement, comes from the local funeral homes
Okay,
and word of mouth of just the way we keep the cemetery.
okay. Okay. And to confirm, we would not as a township put a sign in front of our cemetery that said plots for sale, correct? Okay,
That is correct. I would defer to Mr.
Not at this
Parks.
time.
okay.
I have no
I mean, it was perceived as disrespectful, so I
Sure,
don't know.
absolutely.
But if you had a family member in there, you might think differently of it, so it's,
I would not like that in Mr.
No.
Rushing, yes.
okay. Okay. Oh, I had no other questions.
Of the two vehicles that have been delivered, are they working out good?
Not, we have had a backlog of fire issues to deal with. So we've kind of pushed ours back a little bit. Hopefully by the end of the week, they'll be completely outfitted.
So
Okay.
one's in service on the road, that's Mr. Parks' vehicle. We've taken Mr. Parks' old vehicle, the gray one as you see out there, since we have an employee on light duty, in the sheriff's office, he was driving that vehicle, so, and then as we start rotating and get some, the additional pool vehicle, we'll then put that vehicle on gov deals. Although during COVID-19, just to let the board know, staff is reviewing some other options. Gov deals is kind of closed down because of COVID-19. So we have stuff that, next in the Sally Point that's ready to go. Mr. Richard's just in here, so he saw some of the stuff that's ready to get, but we can't, move any of that product out, because of Gov deals right now. So, we are looking at some alternatives. If we do, that has to be approved by the Board of Township Trustees.
Auction Zip or Bid Spotter.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're looking at both those.
Okay.
Yes, the vehicles do look nice, and, we're waiting on certain things, but, they should start trickling in.
So we'll get to see them in maybe the next meeting?
Yeah, we'll bring Mr. Parks, once he gets his light bar on there, and, bring it to the meeting.
Are you outfitting the new pickups, for a plow?
No, we are not currently, we do not
Okay.
have enough staff, to operate the vehicles we have now, so.
Okay. Okay.
But they are actually set up for, plow.
They have the plow prep kit on them?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Board, next item is on page 89 of your packet, is a purchase request to upgrade the fire station lighting and technology, for Fire Station 65. Staff did bring this up, as, we had to upgrade the entire system, for the new system. These two purchases, especially the first one, is, state term pricing. We want to secure the current state term pricing, it's about to go up. And Fire Chief's here, as well, I believe as Chief Easter's here as well, to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Ms. Dean?
I think when we were talking about this, we were talking about, some items that we wanted to make sure that were addressed with the new system. And now I'm lost on what we talked about, I don't remember. There were some proprietary issues, or something, were those resolved?
Were there any proprietary issues with the system? I mean, it's Motorola system, so.
Yeah, I'll let Chief Easter speak to this. He is the subject matter expert.
Sure. So the proprietary concerns that we discussed last time, Motorola obviously has some software pieces that go into play that are proprietary. There's no way around that without a significant investment to change the entire system out. We are still using the hardware PLC-based components within the system rather than software-based proprietary that are in other similar systems. So all the proprietary pieces that are in place are minimized as low as we can make those.
Okay. Mr. Kretz?
With regards to the equipment that is no longer, that we're replacing essentially, so what is our plan with that equipment? Just to surplus it off? Is there a group, CERT or some other group that could benefit from that equipment, or is it from a licensing standpoint?
Sure, so the only piece that actually gets replaced and removed is the server that runs the fire station alerting system. That server was purchased in 2012 and is past its expected life. So that box will actually be replaced, and that will be traded in as part of this, so we get the return on that without having to go through the GovDeals process to surplus that item.
Okay, so the price that's, the amount that's on here, the $557,651, is net of the trade-in value?
It is, and the actual upgrade portion of that price is $179,830 for the upgrade. The remaining amount of $377,821 is all parts of this fire station that we had identified as soft and hard costs. So all of the low voltage wiring within the station that was in the plan is covered under this portion.
I had a question on this software. Does it have, and with the upgrades and the amount of money we're paying, does it have any process in there to trigger the lights to in the surrounding area to turn them flashing or red for the fire engine to go through? Does it have any part in that technology?
So this can actually control a traffic light that's local to the fire station.
Right.
It does not control any traffic provisions past the fire station. Station 65 is slated with the approval of the county engineer to control the light at Trayvine and Fairgrounds Road so that we can safely exit onto the roadway and minimize the liability to the township during responses.
Is there any discussion, or do you know of any future products that we'll be able to, change the lights in maybe a 5 or 10 mile radius?
Yes, that is actually a project that the Community Risk Department is actually working on. I have interfaced with Fire Marshal Grosjean with some of his questions for that and some of how that would integrate into our current fleet of apparatus.
Great.
So we are looking at, as Chief mentioned, Community Development Risk Department, we started conversations with the city engineer. We looked at this years ago by applying for U.S. Fire Administration grant money. However, that's not a priority in regards to traffic systems that whether work. Now, the good news is since we looked at that grant, technology has changed a lot. And actually the county engineer, or excuse me, the city engineer and staff had a great conversation about looking at other grant sources outside of the U.S. Fire Administration and potentially working with Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission on this as well.
Or we can work with maybe the police department too. And we can
Well,
get
so it was specified that any vehicle system that could have it, whether the police department, the fire department would have it here locally, any other jurisdiction that would put it in their system would also be able to use this system. So, for example, if City of Xenia was making a transport to Soaring Medical Center and the system was in, they would be able to use that system. Same thing with Fairborn, same thing. The last time we went after a grant application, we had support of Kettering Medical Center. And our intent as we look at all the options that are available is to get everybody in the room and have that
great.
discussion.
Great.
So that if we do go after grant money, multi-jurisdictional, private and public partnership between the hospital and the community.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
To tag onto that though, on the Super Street project, we talked specifically about integrating two technologies into the Super Street. One was the rogue truck sensor. We'll call it a rogue vehicle sensor for lack of a better term. And the other was to have transponder technology to be able to shut down those lights so we could get a vehicle through there. But what Chief Heister just indicated is that it would sort of work the signal at Treybine. So we have no control of the new intersections at 35?
That system was cut over to the cross frontage. So that was the first technology piece that was cut out. It was very significant cost to it. Now, preemption can be added to any of those signals down the road. One thing we indicated is that with ODOT is that the city and or the township would have access to controlling those lights, so we can make modifications to tournaments and allowing throughput and everything. So we can add the preemption system to the orchard and factory lights as part of the Super Street in the future, and we would look at that. What we're talking about here is just the station alerting. Preemption is a whole nother animal and project. The station alerting allows connectivity to lights that are in proximity to the fire station to control it. So
Which 35 on Orchard is a pretty big one. It's closer to Treybine.
Exactly, but I mean, that's not within the proximity of what we're talking about. For example, county engineer and I have already had discussions about the light project here at Orchard and Dayton Xenia to be tied to the preemption system here at Station 61. So, and we talked to the city with all the road modifications down the road, is potentially adding just an emergency signal in front of Station 62. But that would require additional grant money. It was not budgeted with the current upgrades of the widening project.
To be clear, I'm not suggesting that we should have one in place of the other. And with what we just spoke about, we need all four.
Oh, I agree.
So
I agree.
what is the cost?
For a preemption system? Chief, do you recall what our grant application was in 2012?
I want to say it was in the $500,000 range, but I don't remember for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and technology's changed. The system that we've been discussing among staff and to the city, and the city would prefer, is you would have, and preemption separate from this topic, but you'll be able to control ER and non-ER responses. So in other words, if you're running ER, it will change the lights. If you were doing a non-ER response to transporting a patient to the hospital, you would anticipate that unit being close to the intersection and go ahead and make a prepared the GPS system would say, oh, wait a second, medic 61 is going out north Fairfield, is probably heading, and it would be there, it would be an indication button that they have a patient in level 2 responses. So if they're just driving around town, it's not gonna change anything. So they'll have to be actually on a call to make those changes. And that was something we wanted to look at with the fire department's Pro QA program, is that we do have certain responses, quite a lot of responses that are non-ER. Now, we don't wanna be sitting at a traffic light for 4 or 5 minutes going up, so we wanted to look at a system that would be able to handle our non-ER responses that would anticipate, travel time with the vehicles.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 10940 to Motorola Solutions for the fire station alerting upgrade and Station 65 technology in the amount of $557,651 and authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 90 of your packet is a contract with Veteran and DP&L for utility service for Station 65. Budget justification starts on page 90 with a motion on page 91 and 92.
Any comments? I had one comment, and that would be to, when this is approved, or when it gets approved, that we advertise to the residents to subscribe for service. I think putting something out to all the residents in that area to help offset our cost would be fantastic, plus it would also help them out.
Yeah, Chief Easter and I can tell you, every time we meet with a resident up there, they wanna know when that gas line's going in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, is this in place of, in addition to, or in lieu of, aid to construction?
This is the aid to construction.
This is it, total?
Yes, we need to engage Veteran because the gas line is farther away.
Right.
So in order to keep the project on schedule, when we get to that stage, we need to start Veteran working now. And we went ahead and included the electric as the aid to construction so that we were not waiting on that either, because that will also power the trailer and the on-site electric when we start the construction site.
Okay. Is Vectren, will they charge to bring a drop to a residence in that area?
As I understand it, there will be a fee to the residents to subscribe to that, but then we will get a rebate from that based on the residents that do subscribe to service with the line that would service our facility.
Yeah. Okay. I know in the past, Vectren has waived, DP&L did not, but Vectren had waived based on other development. This one is, it's virtually developed all the way around the station, I get that. So it's not like we're bringing it to a greenfield that's gonna explode in development because we're building a hospital there. But, okay, all right, thank you.
I make a motion to approve purchase request 10941 to Vectren Energy for natural gas service for Fire Station 65 and the amount not to exceed $110,000 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 10942 to Dayton Power and Light for electrical utility service for Fire Station 65 in the amount not to exceed $10,000 and authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Discussion point, real quick, sorry. Do we have full internet at that site?
We will, tower, microwaves.
You'll do it through the tower, so we don't need a spectrum line or anything like that. Okay.
So the previous purpose that you authorized with Motorola Solutions includes the network connectivity to that location.
Okay, just making sure.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 92 as well, the COVID impact to the community, followed by the biweekly report for the fire department on page 94. Fire Chief Anabos is here to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I don't have any.
Mr. Kretz?
I don't have any. thanks for the update and hope everybody stays safe.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I did have one question relative to, I guess, the township staff in general, not to isolate, but, and I'm not suggesting we do, it's just a curiosity question. Do we have any requirement for employees to report back to the township if they have traveled to any hotspots? Okay.
Not within Ohio, so if they're
No,
outside.
out of the state.
That's correct.
We do have that requirement, okay. So, and then we have the discretion then to quarantine, ask them to quarantine, or it's just a courtesy, ask them to
So
self-quarantine?
we ran into an issue, I think, with one of the fire department staff that was traveling outside. Chief, you want to expand on that, what we did with that employee?
Yeah, so there is a specific exemption for public safety and healthcare workers for the quarantine. And so we coordinated with our medical director to work out basically a process to bring him back safely. And it was essentially a heightened self-monitoring and supervisor monitoring situation. So he was allowed to come back to work, but he was watched a little more closely for, I think it was the 2-week period. But we did not prevent him from coming back to work based off the CDC guidelines.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is we have a personal friend who had a daughter who works in a hospital and was told by her employer that if they leave the state, they have to report that. And then when they did, they were told they had to take a self-quarantine for 2 weeks without pay. So I didn't, obviously with a union situation like that, I didn't know what we were stipulating or if it was an honor system or.
So under the COVID and CARES Act, we did exempt all township employees from the leave. However, by policy, we did give, based on the 24/48 schedule, a little more time for both our firefighters and gave the same amount of time conversion for a 40-hour position to our non-union employees. We did take away some of the provisions that were going to be difficult for the township to enforce, so that's why we exempted everybody, but then we turned around and gave essentially our employees a little more than what the federal law allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's being tracked also, just to let the board know, and Mr. Rushing knows this as well, that it's being tracked if we do have an employee on that leave. It is tracked in OSL, and it is reimbursable under the money we're going to talk about here shortly.
Okay.
Okay.
Board, that's all I have.
Our legal advisor, Dawn Frick, do you have any comments?
No, nothing at this time.
And we wish you well.
Thank you.
Our fiscal officer.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace and Board. First item for your consideration is a resolution to authorize supplemental appropriations and certify revenue on our certificate of resources for a new fund, Fund 2905, which is the COVID-19 Relief Fund. As the board may recall, at a previous board meeting, we adopted the authorizing legislation to accept the CARES Act funding from the state of Ohio. Kind of timely with Commissioner Glazer speaking on behalf of the county. This is how we process this in terms of a township. Included in your packet is the resolution. The resolution authorizes two separate actions. One being, according to Ohio budgetary law, we have to appropriate the full amount to be able to have staff make expenditures from this new fund. And then we have to certify the revenue to the county budget commission, who will then increase our certificate of available resources so that we can make those expenditures. As staff knows, but the board, we did receive on July 1st our full payment from the Greene County Auditor. In your packet is a photocopy of the check. We received $103,213.93 for the CARES Act funding for our portion of that. Staff will be working to allocate the costs. We are able to reimburse the funds that have already made expenditures and COVID-19 activities such as personal protective equipment, as the administrator mentioned, lost time in terms of quarantine and other pre-authorized items. I do have to mention this is governed by the IRS, so they are releasing new bulletins on a somewhat rotatory basis. So we have to ensure that for audit purposes, as this fund will be audited, as in all their funds, that we're following their guidance. Any reimbursements for funds that have already made expenditures in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic will have to be transferred. The funds will have to be transferred from this fund back to the corresponding fund, be it the general fund, road fund, fire fund, or what have you. That also has to be authorized by the board by a resolution for a transfer to complete that reimbursement process. That will come at a later date for the board's review and approval. Any current and future expenditures will be made out of this fund, and we have until October the 15th to make any expenditures out of this fund. However, we have up until December 28th to actually, any encumbered funds that were remaining, we're able to make those expenditures. But at the end of December 28th, any fund balance that would be available will be meted back to the state treasurer's office, so that the state of Ohio can then reallocate that. But I know staff, as well as myself, be working diligently on ensuring that we're making sure we count everything that we can to put towards this fund. So that's what this resolution authorizes, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So the dollar amount, do you have up until those dates to spend that amount, or did the expense have to be incurred prior to the July 1?
I'm sorry, July 1?
When you received the check, so did
No.
you have up until those deadlines to expend it, so in the event you didn't, you could purchase additional PPE or whatever you needed to do?
Correct.
Okay.
We have until October the 15th to
Okay.
encumber any funds,
Okay.
and up to December 28th to actually make the expenditures, or actually the dollars leaving our bank, essentially.
Sure, but it has to be encumbered by the 15th of October.
Correct.
Okay.
So our intent, Mr. Rushing and I have been talking about this at quite length regarding, first is to look at the unbudgeted. Now, that's the key that's been put out by the state of Ohio and the IRS. It has to be an unbudgeted
Correct.
expense. So what staff is going through is putting together all that. We will present that to you, then to make the changes of transferring from this fund back to those funds, whether it be the general fund, fire fund, road fund, et cetera, or police fund. There are other expenditures we are looking at. Also, this money can be used as a local match. So the grant that the board approved earlier this year related to the sanitation equipment, if we do get that within this time frame, we can use the local match out of this fund. The other project that we are looking at is actually, it's not budgeted, but our tablets that we are using in the fire department. Mr. Rushing and I talked about this, as well as they cannot be sanitized because they're just like your tablets that you use. We have to be very careful of putting, sanitizing spray on them. So we are looking at other tablets that will be rugged, that we essentially can
A hardened case.
a harder case or something more rugged. If we're not successful in that grant, we can use this money to purchase some of the equipment sanitizing equipment that would benefit not only the fire department, but the township buildings, the substation, and the road department.
Could we use this money to create a entranceway to the administration building that would have that barrier that?
We could. So I will tell you, we are working
Is
on a
on
project
budget?
looking at, HSI started today in regards to securing. Myself and my assistant today met with a vendor to do a kiosk interaction system in the breezeway, so that we can ensure, at least during this time, during the pandemic, that we are isolating, we can handle, we can help people without even coming out of the offices. And that system will have access to our website, where they can upload devices or upload forms and things like that. So, or if they just need to talk to somebody, they can push a button and have a two-way interaction. So we're pricing that out. Obviously, we wanna look at, staff wants to prioritize what, we need for public safety purposes and the safety of our employees.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are looking at
Okay.
something similar to that, a kiosk system that can be wiped down. That was one of the things that we said, it can't just be, a computer out there. We need to be able to sanitize it, after each use. So we are looking at that, and believe it or not, if you Google COVID-19 kiosk devices, there are tons of stuff out there.
Big business.
Everybody's looking for that.
Sure.
So we are looking at different things to bring to you. For example, the new camera out there, that's related to during the operation, separating staff and when we were still remote. Those expenses can be reimbursed, and that's what we're looking at first, is reimbursing those
Reimburse
expenses.
first, yeah.
And then stage 2 is look at, the grant, whether we're successful or not, and we're still waiting to hear. It is part of the CARES Act.
Yeah, if
so-
you can leverage these dollars, then that's even
Yeah,
better.
and
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at, is there grant money available, and can we use this as a local match? The only difficult part is, it has to be done before that October, time.
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
So you need this resolution approved?
Correct.
Is that me?
Go for it.
I make a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize the supplemental appropriations and certify revenue for the available certificate of resources for Fund 2905-COVID-19 Relief Fund as presented.
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you. There's 3 copies that we need signed.
Sure.
Thank you, board. Your next item is the resolution that was added to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. This resolution would update the township's investment policy. The Township Investment Oversight Committee met last and late May, but during that meeting, I did bring to the attention of the committee some inconsistencies that the township's policy had with the Ohio Revised Code. As the board knows, we are a statutory government, so our power to invest rests in the Ohio Revised Code, and we are limited to what we are able to invest in through the ORC. However, our actual investment policy was more restrictive than the actual code. It was discussed among the committee, as well as I've had discussions, plenty of discussions as of late with our new investment advisor, Mr. Ted Sumner of Huntington Bank, about looking at our portfolio. And actually came about, he was recommending some items in our portfolio that we were ineligible to invest in due to our investment policy. So essentially what we are doing by adopting this resolution is, and the red line is in front of you, is to remove the actual verbatim text of the ORC and just simply input that our code, our investment policy is pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, Section 135, which is the chapter in which authorizes local governments to invest certain interim funds. By doing this, it will allow, as the Ohio Revised Code is updated and changed through state legislature and the governor signing a law to enact, it would allow our township policy to be updated to be fluent with what's allowable by law. If the Investment Oversight Committee, as well as this board, wants to be more restrictive by our portfolio, we're able to do that. But to restrict us by our policy does limit us to have the availability to invest in certain items as they come about. So I am recommending that we adopt this resolution. Thank you to the administrator as well as our law advisor, Ms. Frick, for reviewing the policy. Has been reviewed by legal and is in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code. Be happy to answer any, but I do want to point out the main difference from what the township's policy was to the Ohio Revised Code was in terms of commercial paper. Commercial paper in our current township policy is limited to notes not to mature later than 180 days after purchase. The Ohio Revised Code does now allow 270 days after purchase, and that is what you most commonly see in terms of what's available to purchase and what was being recommended by our new investment advisor, Mr. Sumner with Huntington Bank.
My only question was, on 7.1, the classification on some of, I mean, I understand maybe we don't need to go to the highest classification, but I am concerned about the classification of some of those notes. And, like in bonds, you have a basic, you try to get AA or AAA bonds, in your portfolio, and you're careful of, bond ratings. Is there the investment advisory committee has like a minimum qualification on the notes, and you don't mention any changes in the bond portfolio, so I guess I'd just refer my question to the notes.
Sure. Now there are policies linked to the Ohio Revised Code. The Ohio Revised Code does mention the notes are to be rated at the time of purchase in the highest classification established by at
Okay.
least 2 nationally recognized standard rating services.
They could change, but you
That's
can't
okay.
buy them unless they're AAA.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I was just concerned about that.
No, thank you
Now
for
that
that.
it's part of the Ohio Revised Code, I didn't read the code, so.
No, and it's a little misleading, I apologize. It is struck out on the actual policy, but just so we could be more fluid with the ORC changes, we're allowing it to be linked to the ORC.
Mr. Rushing, just from a technicality perspective, and this is to follow on Ms. Wallace's question. So if a bond, it is possible, could have a A1 Moody rating and a AA plus S&P rating. And so which one applies?
According to ORC, you have to have 2 highest ratings.
Okay, so that means it's not an either or, it's a both.
Correct.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with that then.
Okay. So is there a resolution or
We
is
have a
it
resolution
just a
here,
policy? Okay.
just stating adopting the policy with the changes that were presented. If you would like just to, as presented.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry, I think I had it.
We don't have it.
I was gonna mark it all up for you.
I think I'll make a motion to approve a resolution amending the investment policy of Beavercreek Township as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes,
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you,
thank you very
Board.
much, Mr. Rushing.
I do have 2 brief items just to bring to the board's attention. You may have seen it on the social media pages as well as the website of the township. I do want to thank our HR manager. The 2 positions that the board has authorized at the April 1st meeting have been posted to the township's website as well as other professional organizations and the Dayton Daily News. Those 2 positions are the AP specialist as well as the payroll specialist. So I just encourage all those who may be listening, but especially the board as well as staff, if you have qualified candidates, to please reach out to the township's HR department, who will be receiving the applications as well as resumes and coordinating that process with the authorized township process. And then relating that back to me so we can interview and get some full-time staff in the office to make that transition. My intent and desire is to have some overlap with our current 2 account temps who have been working with us, one since January, that's Lori, and one since April, Kathy, so we can have a little bit of overlaps to do some training in that office as they've been working obviously with some of the systems as well as processes of the fiscal office as well as the township. But those have been posted, and obviously as we progress in that progress and interviewing, I'll keep the board abreast of that, and then we'll move into the appropriate sessions in order to hire the qualified candidates. And then the other item I just want to bring to the board's attention, I will send this out via email, but I will be requesting, especially to Mr. Kretz, a investment oversight committee probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and invite our new investment advisor, Mr. Ted Sumner with Huntington Bank, to present on our portfolio as of to date. Again, we transitioned from Morgan Stanley to Huntington. As we all know, unfortunately, due to the state of affairs with COVID-19, the rates are not as attractive as they were, but we're still being invested with our core portfolio to the first we're able to be. So I will be sending out a kind of a cursory save the date to when we're able to meet for our next investment oversight committee. But other than that, board, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rushing. Under trustees, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission had no July meeting, but I did have a meeting with the Greene County Township Association chaired by Mr. Kugler from Greene County Commission. We started a meetings where all the township officers come in and talk about what's happening in Greene County. We were given this from the county perspectives 2040, the Greene County Future Land Use Plan update. They're starting to develop it and asking questions of the community, so I will make sure that the rest of the board gets a copy of this document. Technical Advisory Committee, any?
They'll be having a meeting virtually, I think, the next couple weeks.
Regional Planning?
We did have a Zoom meeting, essentially on June 23rd, and the takeaway from it, there was some Nathaniel's Grove discussion. There were no issues. The highway business overlay text amendment was discussed, and again, no issues with recommendation for approval there. And you may have received a letter from Devin Shoemaker. So we've had difficulty essentially getting a quorum on our Zoom meetings. So in fact, the meeting in May ended up we did not reach a quorum. So the meeting on June 23rd, we had to essentially dial for a quorum. We had to call people until we could get enough people on the meeting. So it sounds like Mr. Kugler was going to attempt to get us access to Ledbetter so that we could have a large open room and attempt to still distance and have a face-to-face meeting. So but that letter was stimulated out of the need to. The challenge is if we meet and we don't reach a quorum, we're required to take action or make a recommendation within a certain amount of time. And if we can't meet again, in many cases, even if we were going to recommend a change or denial, it's moot. We lose that opportunity. So.
Thank you. Health Department?
We did have a meeting via the team Zoom, and I think it's GoToMeeting, however they do theirs, on the 2nd, and there was just discussion about the COVID-19 and impact to the community and different things that they're doing and implementing and talking about just the state of the health of the community.
Okay. School Superintendent, City Manager, and Township.
Schools will be coming out with a plan about reopening, so the school board meets this week, so we should hear what is final. They did, as board indicated, may have seen, they did poll the community and what their thoughts were, so those results are in. But the community feels comfortable with in regard to going back to school. So there are so the official plan will be approved by the school board and then put out by the community. City manager and I have constant phone contact regards different projects within the communities and other issues related to COVID-19. Red Hat Advisory Committee, we have not met. They did put out potentially meeting virtually, so we'll see where that goes. Greene County Township Association is tomorrow night.
Investment Oversight.
Just before I touch on that, the Greene County Township Association tomorrow night, Carolyn did give me a call and asked me just if I want to be on the agenda relative to the discussion we had about the ability for townships to be able to sign for trustees to sign documents electronically. And that Ms. Frick did some research for us, if you recall, when we were kind of at the height of our shutdown. And the only agencies were state agencies that actually had that authorization. So Representative Perales offered to carry that torch and try to tack that on to another bill that was in process, but he asked for that I solicit essentially the Township Association support. So tomorrow I'll be, she put me on the agenda, so I'll be the third item on the agenda for that, and I'll just speak to what we dealt with here and ask for the association's support of Mr. Morales's efforts to get that changed so that, and honestly, I think it should be broader than just townships. It should be any local government, county government should have the ability to do that. So it just brings us up to 2020. As far as Investment Oversight Committee, nothing to report, just kudos to Mr. Rushing and his efforts. So, in fact, it may be beneficial. It's been so long. It's been well over a year since we've heard from an investment advisor as a board. We might just recommend that is it Sumner or Sumners?
Sumner.
That's what I thought. Mr. Sumner actually come as a guest speaker and give
Sure.
us a presentation to all the trustees, rather than to the committee, and then and we could invite Mr. Henry to participate, and certainly
Absolutely.
could invite Jan to participate, and we'd have our committee and everyone would get to hear it at the same
I
time.
think it's a good idea.
Do it by teams as well. I
Yeah,
don't know.
if he prefers to dial in, we could certainly have him dial in, and we got Mr. Henry.
Absolutely.
So, but that way, we all get to hear it.
I think it's great.
It's been too long.
Yeah, it has been.
And let them know that we do expect this year's returns to be higher than last year. The market conditions are irrelevant, the stock market's back, there's no
There you go.
excuse.
Right. It didn't go anywhere last year. It never got moved.
Okay.
Any other comments from the Board of Trustees? Not, I'll accept a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to consider the employment and compensation of public employees. Under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject to pending or imminent court action. Under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G2, and I'll ask, we have this to consider the purchase, but we can also say to consider the purchase or sale.
Correct, it includes
Yeah,
the whole statute.
so 121.22G2 to consider the purchase or sale of property for public purposes. The purchase of property for a public purpose or the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person or personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. So no member of the public body shall use Division G2 of this section as a subterfuge for providing covert information to prospective buyers or sellers. A purchase or sale of public property is void if the seller or buyer of the public property has received covert information from a member of a public body that has not been disclosed to the general public in sufficient time for other prospective buyers and sellers to prepare and submit offers.
Woo. Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes. All right, we're back. I need a motion, please.
I make a
Wait.
mo-
You gotta make a
Oh,
motion.
to return to, I make a motion to return to the regular scheduled meeting.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes,
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes, at 9:21.
at 9:21 p.m. Sheesh. I make a motion to appoint Mr. Kretz as the board representative to various real estate related matters.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Do I need to abstain? Or yes?
Yeah, to the end.
Abstain.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna beat you.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.